We bought the SpotOn Virtual Fence earlier this year for our dog Esme and just wanted to share a little bit about our experiences with it.
With the price tag of about $1,500, it's not a small purchase, so we wanted to share some pros and cons of the collar.
There's definitely some things that we wish we'd known before we bought it, so just going to share some of those to hopefully help you out.
The SpotOn Virtual Fence is a collar that uses GPS, so you don't have to bury a bunch of wires in the ground. And you can actually make a bunch of different fences in different shapes and sizes and locations.
We chose the SpotOn collar for our dog Esme because where we live the soil is really rocky and it would be almost impossible to bury wires in the ground. So this was a lifesaver for us.
And because we have a large property, the area we wanted to fence in was about 30 acres. That would be impossible burying wires. The collar came in a sleek and simple box, and the initial setup was not as easy as we hoped for.
The setup would have been really easy if we'd had a normal sized yard, but there were some big challenges that came with trying to create a fence around such a large property.
To set up the fence, you're supposed to follow some simple prompts on the collar and walk around the perimeter.
The area that we wanted to fence was pretty big, and just getting through the blackberries and across the steep hills alone was a challenge.
Because of that, it was super frustrating when the fence failed to save the first several times we tried to map it out.
When we finished walking the perimeter and we hit save, it would save in a super weird shape. The first 3/4 of the boundary would be correct, but then it would cut off a giant corner. So after trying and failing to create the map a few times, I scoured the website, the FAQ section, the literature they sent, blogs on the website, and I could not find anything about this. So I finally broke down and called their customer support. Apparently, the collar uses GPS markers, which it drops every 10 feet or so when you're walking the perimeter and creating the fence. What they don't tell you is that there are a limited number of markers, and when it runs out of those markers, it will just draw a straight line from wherever it runs out back to the beginning, which is why it was cutting off a part of our property.
If you have a regular sized yard to a few acres, this won't be that big of an issue for you.
Yeah, it'll actually be really easy if you have a normal sized yard. If you have a really large property like ours, it's definitely worth knowing this before you get started. You're gonna wanna use the pause function a lot while you're creating the fence. And what that will do is just allow you to save the markers so you can get all the way around your fence without running out.
Buying this collar was expensive, but the biggest commitment ended up being the amount of time it took to train our dog to use it. Esme is the smartest and most obedient dog either of us have ever had.
Yeah.
And we thought it would be a breeze, but even as good as she is, it took a lot of time and patience.
In the end, it took about 6 weeks to train her, which meant 2 training sessions a day, every day, for almost 2 months. They say that some dogs can be trained in 2 weeks. Every dog is different, and they have different training plans for different personality types of dogs. But you should just know that this is potentially a very big time commitment. But this is also the part where we have only really good things to say about SpotOn's customer support. When I started to run into some training issues with Esme, just like a little barrier we couldn't get past, I called their customer support to ask them for advice, and they actually hooked me up with a complimentary session with a professional dog trainer to help me work through our issues. After the session with the trainer, it really did help us, and we were able to get past the problems that we were having in training. But a couple weeks later, I ran into a different snag. I called customer support again, and I was not expecting this, but they set me up with another complimentary session with a dog trainer who then helped us get past the next hurdle. I don't know how often they'll do this and if they'll do it for everyone.
But they should, because you just spent $1,500.
Yeah. I was extremely pleased with the customer support we received from SpotOn. I don't know that we've ever purchased anything from a company that did such a good job making sure their customers were happy.
Now that all the drama and work of setting it up and training is over, we've been able to just sit back and enjoy using the collar for a few months now. And 99% of the time, we're happy with it. Our dog Esme gets really excited when we pick up the collar. She runs to the door because she knows she's about to go outside.
Having multiple fence options has also been really nice. We actually have 2 fences set up. One is a smaller perimeter around our yard for when we want her to stay close. And then we have another one that goes all the way around the 30 acres for when we want to give her a little more space or we're taking a walk around the property.
There have been a couple of times we've let her out without the collar, and she stays in the boundary because she's so used to it now.
Or we've let her out and the collar has been on, but we forgot to activate it, and she just stays within the boundary.
We're honestly so impressed with how smart and good she is, and we're so happy about it.
We don't have to worry about her getting into the road or wandering off too far. It's just been like
Yeah.
a really great peace of mind for us.
Once she learned the fence, she really learned it. Someone could come to the house and she'll stay right at the boundary where she knows that it'll start beeping. She won't go past it.
Now that she knows the fence, it has been very reliable. There's not been a single time that she crossed the boundary just because she wanted to.
We mentioned earlier we have 2 fences. Normally she's on a smaller fence, but when we go on walks around the property, we put the bigger one on and ask her to follow us, but she'll stop at the boundary of the smaller fence.
Even though the bigger fence is on, she knows that that's her normal boundary and she won't go beyond it.
So we'll have to actually carry her for a few steps to be like, hey, the bigger one's on, and then she gets it. But she's a genius, so this may not happen with your dog.
Yeah.
There have been a couple issues that might be worth knowing about though.
One is the tracking. We got a complimentary free year of tracking when we bought the collar, but turns out we don't have the right kind of cell service in our area. For a while we didn't know what was going on. We just saw that it said no service on the collar, even though we had full bars on our cell phones. When I emailed customer support, they kind of explained it. They said, while your cell phone may have cell service, the collars utilize a different kind of cell service that is not available everywhere. That's something to know about before you buy tracking. Personally, I would recommend that you sign up for a month of tracking to make sure that it's going to work reliably in your area before you sign up for a whole year.
The second issue is the alerts we get when Esme goes out of containment don't seem to be very reliable.
At first we were getting notifications all the time that Esme had exited containment, but we knew she hadn't crossed the boundary because she was just like sitting safe inside the yard. I'm not totally sure why that was happening, but we ended up just disregarding the alerts because the fence was working so well and she was just staying in it 100% of the time.
Lastly, we recently had a very troubling experience where Esme got shocked, ran back into the safe zone, and continued to get shocked for the full 10 seconds, which is the most that the collar will shock.
We don't know if she tried to cross the fence boundary. All we know is that we heard her screaming and running across the yard in just like absolute terror. The static correction should have stopped when she came back into the yard, but it didn't. She ran all the way through the yard where she should have been safe, and she was still being shocked. We know because she was screaming like she was being murdered. And by the time we got to her, she was cowering in fear and she had peed herself, and it was just the saddest thing. We were so upset. We took off the collar, brought her inside, gave her treats, tried to make her feel better. But it was so sad. And for the next few days, she didn't want to go outside anymore. She was like not excited to go outside because I think she was afraid that it was going to happen again.
In all the months that we've been using the collar, it hadn't ever happened before, and luckily it hasn't happened since.
So for now, we decided to keep using the collar because it brings her so much happiness to be outside, and it also protects her from getting into the road and potentially being killed.
If it happens again, we'll definitely have to reconsider because it was such a traumatic experience for Esme. We've seen her get shocked before by the fence, and it's usually like a little yip and she goes immediately back, normally when she hears the very first beep. So for her to scream that loudly, we know it actually hurt and scared her.
We're hoping that it was just a one-time malfunction. For now, it seems to be a one-time malfunction. So
yeah,
crossing our fingers that it won't ever happen again. At the end of the day, Esme is 100 times happier using this collar and being outside than she would be if she had to stay inside all day. She loves being outside. She absolutely lives for it. And this collar makes it possible for her to spend all of her time doing what makes her happiest.
So for that, we're really grateful and satisfied. But does the collar work exactly the way we thought it would? No.
But the issues seem to have been pretty small so far for the most part. The training was pretty grueling. But if you love your dog a lot and you have a lot of patience, I think anyone could do it.
All in all, I'd say we've been mostly very happy with the SpotOn collar.